Welcome back to YIR in Review. This is a series where we look at games that I didn't get a chance to thoroughly cover. These are not reviews, and these hardly fall into my typical first impressions series. We'll be wrapping up the year with my top 5 best and worst games of 2020. Without further ado, let's get started. I've always been a fan of the Metroidvania style of games with emphasis on exploration. Even the backtracking I found to be quite enjoyable. We've been getting at least one fairly high-profile Metroidvania every year, but this year has been kind of a miss, unless you count the new Ori game, which I really don't consider a Metroidvania. So when I found out The Guise, made by a smaller studio with a fun art direction, was taking on the genre, I was really interested, and I couldn't wait to play it. Unfortunately, it ended up being a really poor first impressions. I really tried to like this game, I really did, but I couldn't play it very long without getting bored. And I ended up not doing my video on it at all. I was going to, but my save file mysteriously disappeared, so you're going to be seeing some footage from another YouTuber right here. I'm going to leave a link in the description to his channel. I just couldn't stomach playing more of the game, let alone getting back to where I was. But I do have some of my footage that I was able to salvage. Now, I don't know if I lost the save because it was a pre-release press copy and it was updated to the final release, or if it was on my end, but I just don't have the save anymore. So the game's biggest hurdle is the combat. Now, Metroidvanias typically have simplistic combat. That's not the issue here. The issue is that they've opted for an extremely restrictive melee combat system. You have to headbutt and sidestep enemies to beat them. You can dodge roll right through them, which is fine, but you have to get right up to their faces to attack. Needless to say, the combat itself gets very repetitive very quick. You attack and sidestep, attack, sidestep, repeat. There are other abilities that you can acquire, like a cool ranged acid spit, but the core combat revolves around this incredibly repetitive motion. This means that in order to balance the game, all enemies pretty much have to be designed around this restrictive, patience-wearing combat system. In games like Hollow Knight, which also has, funny enough, a simplistic combat system, even though that game was in my top 10 of the decade, you have a bit more range and mobility with your attacks, which are also upgradable. You're lighter, more agile in general. You can bounce around more to gain more momentum, you can air dash. Other games in the genre, like Symphony of the Night, have weapon variety in addition to various items and abilities. I'm not expecting a small game like this to really blow the doors off the genre here, but I expect it to not be incredibly tedious. I expect a fun, simple little gameplay loop, and the Guise just doesn't deliver that. And the Metroidvania elements don't really start to show themselves until like 90 minutes into the game. The level design itself, the core aspect of a Metroidvania, is pretty substandard, and it's just not very inviting to explore and have fun with. It's really a lot of simplistic platforming that doesn't really go anywhere. The levels do kind of look okay. You know, the backdrop does look nice. You know, the art style is decent, but the overall design of the levels, how you get to and from an area, it's just very repetitive because you're dealing with, I know I'm harping on this a lot, you're dealing with this really repetitive combat system that just makes fighting enemies a chore. The combat just doesn't stop with the basic enemies. It also bleeds into the boss fights. Most bosses in this game can be defeated by just standing next to it and attacking. The first boss might be one of the most involved fights, despite it being pretty shallow by itself. Now, it isn't all bad for the game. I think the atmosphere, art direction, and some of the music is actually pretty compelling in building an interesting world. The premise is certainly cool for what it is. You are twisted into this demon creature, and now the whole town's out to get you. It's kind of cool. Everyone hates you except the orphanage you're raised in. So, for what it's worth, there is a bit going on in terms of storytelling and atmosphere, but unfortunately, it's hard to recommend this game, even to a die-hard Metroidvania fan. Anyway guys, I'll see you next time. Thank you very much for watching. I'm out.